Hey, this is James from All Hail Internal Combustion. Today, since it's cold and not riding season, we're going to start working on my 74 Honda CB360. I parked it just towards the end of riding season. Lost a lot of power. Was having some ignition glitches. 3/4 throttle would cut out. I have brand new ignition coils, condenser, new points, cheap knockoff points that probably may have lasted 3,000 miles. I think they might be part of the issue. I also pulled the top end off, found that the middle bearing guide, it's not even a bearing, but for the cam, it's pre-finished into the aluminum, was very, very chewed up. Someone had not put the adequate spacing in between the middle of the cam head, we'll call it. I think they call it a valve cover, but so where those two pieces come together, someone didn't put any spacing in there, so it over tightened over the cam and wiped the cam out. I was having oil burning issues in the bike, and I did the valve seals, and that's when I discovered about the cam. And of course I didn't put it back together that way. I cleaned the journal up and it ended up making a lot of noise. I adjusted the valves, but it just the valves are in adjustment and everything. Made sure the timing chain was tight. I also did a timing chain tensioner during all that. You know, the guide down inside the motor that the chain actually rides against. So I replaced all that stuff, and I started getting a lot of top end noise, and I'm guessing it's the lifters and cam all being out of tolerance. There's some pitting in two of the rocker arms that ride against the cam, and the cam has some scoring on it. So my plan is to go ahead and tear the whole top end off of it. I'm going to re-ring it if the cylinder wall looks good. I'm going to put a new head on it, new cam, new rocker arms. If I could source these parts used and in good condition, obviously I'll go ahead and do used. But they have new old stock on these bikes. Since they were so popular, there's still a lot of parts left over, and people are shutting their vintage motorcycle shops down, or still, there's one actually local to us. They have parts sometimes for this. That's where I got my clutch rod from. I actually went to their store and picked it up same day. They had 2 of them in stock. So they were a Honda dealer up in Lewisberry. So what we're going to start off with, I charged the battery and just, came back to it and see if it would start. And choke closed right now, fuel's on. I get nothing. I open the choke up, make sure it's not a fuel delivery. By the way, the carbs were rebuilt. I rebuilt them with a master rebuild kit from Common Motor. So, carbon choke. Still nothing. Pull a little bit of it. Oh, there we go. It fired up a little bit.
Meow.
Well, let me give the bowls a little tap. Maybe we can get it to fire up, and then you can kind of listen to the top end noise that we're hearing. If we could get it to start and run, we could possibly check lifters to make sure they're the right clearance, but I'm pretty sure I did that last time. So anyway, sometimes on these motorcycle carburetors, the float will get a little stuck, and if you just, doesn't have to be anything real heavy, just a little vibrations in the bottom of the bowl sometimes help the float get unstuck. Of course, make sure you actually have gas in here. Yeah, plenty of gas, and it's clean and fresh. I use ethanol free in this. That doesn't seem to be an issue. So I did check spark on the left side.
Another thing you can try to do is, since we're running with ethanol gas, we can crack those vent tubes open on the bottom of the carbs and bleed them out a little bit and see if we get any water out of them, because the ethanol is hygroscopic and it picks up water out of the air, so that might be our problem.
Flathead, I'll open up those vents.
Still, either way, it kind of ran like crap when he parked it, so we know we do have a problem.
We have fuel in the bowls. It's a little yellowed, but
Oh, that's kind of rough looking right there.
so actually, I'm gonna get a little cup here and drain the fuel out of the bowls, because that might be part of the issue. Got the Pringles cup here. That should hold about a bowl's worth of fuel in it.
Oh, that looks like something that we won't discuss on the YouTube channel.
Oh, look at that. That's a pretty slow stream coming in there. But it looks like it's getting clear. So that's a good sign. Let's get that rested there. Put this back in there. Yeah. Alright. But yeah, even if it does start and run, it was having some pretty bad noises and such from the top end. And it had a lot of power loss, and I'd have made this great. You do it from the same side, so I gotta dump that old yellow fuel out. Get in here to the other side.
See, so if you have an old vintage motorcycle, you can eat the Pringles single serving things, and you got a little container to drain your carbs into.
Nope.
Not that we work for Pringles or anything, because we don't.
Yeah, it'd have to be a lot of Pringles.
I only eat the big cans, personally.
Nope, I dropped that screw.
Oh my.
Alright, so we're gonna have to lean over and... Okay. So the fuel stopped. I see the screw. At least it didn't go far. That looks pretty clean. At least we know our floats aren't clogged. And the fuel, I mean, is a little dirty, but it's not... It's just a vent tube for the top end. But it's not foul. I mean, if you open that screw up and nothing comes out, then you know you got a problem. Oh, I just dropped it again. But now I won't be able to find it. Oh, there it is. And obviously, you know, it would be great if the fill was on the other side, but these carburetors are actually all but identical. Actually, I believe that they are completely identical. They just, the choke rod that goes through has a different lever on it. That's it. So, depending on if it's left or right, it's the same carburetor. All right, got it in there. Let me tighten it down. Let me turn the fuel back on. Yeah, it sat outside. I was mad at it. Anyway, go ahead and turn it to reserve. Hopefully we're picking up some stuff. Oh. I'll hold the phone a second. This carburetor seems to have slipped out of the intake boot. So that's an important thing to check for. That could be causing part of the issue. It's definitely not causing the loud noises from inside the motor, but it could be causing why it doesn't want to start. I gotta loosen this one up. You'd be surprised how rigid these carburetors become when you tighten them down. Those aren't the original hose clamps. The original ones were stretched out and very sad. Very, very sad. Oh, man. Ooh. not used to working in this thing on a concrete floor. Yeah, we might have to get a little bit of fuel or gas or propane torch and just heat that up real quick. Is the heat gun still out here?
I don't know. Well, we're going to figure this out and we will be right back.
I tightened the loose hose clamp around this rubber intake boot. I've had those intake boots off, looked at them, make sure they weren't cracked. That's a big cause for that. I should have checked this, but I thought since I put those nice stainless steel clamps that I paid almost $3 a piece for at Home Depot because they're real stainless steel, but maybe not. But they're not rusty. So anyway, I thought it wouldn't come loose, and it obviously did. But we'll see if it fires up now. I help if I choke it. It does like to be choked. So, what I was saying is that the left pipe's still cold and the right one's warm now. So, I, strangely enough, didn't hear the top end rattle, really. There was some there, but not a lot. At least we know, I guess, this side's getting fuel now. Yeah, oil's good. I changed it after I got the bike. Then I changed it again a month or so later just to clean out the inside of the bike.
Make sure when you start your vehicles inside the garage, you crack the garage door a little bit too, because Daddy's starting to feel funny in the head.
It'll be okay. I think it smells wonderful.
It actually does smell good.
The whole place would smell like wood smoke earlier, so. Alright, I think I may have found my issue. My spark plug boot seemed to have come detached from this cable. We'll get this screwed back in there. I'm going to probably apply a little bit of torch heat to soften the spark plug boot up here. But we'll see what this thing's running like, and what basically we want to do is get it running, maybe warmed up a little bit, and we will try to do a compression check on it to see what the compression is before we pull it apart. I know last time I checked it, which was before all these issues, right after I did the top end rebuild, I want to say it was at about 155, which is still inside of a good range, but at the very bottom of it. And so I'm not sure if the valve train is, I think the valve train is mainly the issue, that I'm getting a lot of slop and play in there, and I worry about a detrimental failure in the top end, ruining maybe the piston or the cylinder. So we'll get right back at you once I get this thing fired up.
Well, look at it this way. If you blow the motor up, we can just LS swap it. We'll be right back.
So we're back. Put the intake boot on, tightened everything back together, pulled a large fuel sample out of the tank, make sure it's not contaminated. It might possibly just be ethanol issues. These bikes don't like ethanol. I sometimes couldn't get ethanol free, and I'll put premium fuel in it. So basically it starts up, shuts right back off after revving for a little bit, and the left cylinder is completely dead. It's not firing, so it's either no fuel or no spark. So our right cylinder's hot, left one's ice cold. I believe that it's a fuel delivery issue. It kind of feels, to me, seems like the bowl's emptying out and it's cutting off. And the bike will mostly run on just one cylinder, but it'll run really poorly. Maybe this right cylinder is a little bit lower compression. Last time I worked on the bike, We were in the process of moving. I may have rushed some things together because I loved riding the bike and rode it as much as I could. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull the carburetor off. Pretty simple procedure, but I'll actually turn the gas tank off, drain the lines, pull those off. I'll pull the fuel lines off, pull the carburetors off. They're kind of tricky to get out of there, but you want to pull them off, drop them down, unhook the 2 lines, and then pull it out. Maybe when I get to the point of dropping the carburetor out, we'll get back to the video. Don't need to drag it on too long, but we'll give you guys the good details on it. So, I pulled the sediment bowl off the bottom of the tank. I also pulled that off and blew through the tank to make sure there wasn't a clog in either of the screens inside the tank. There might still be, but I'm going to go ahead and pull the carburetors off. So I pulled the tank off, I pulled the seat off. It's just a through pin with a cotter pin in it. You pull it out, seat comes right off. Tank is just this rubber bushing that you just hold back. I literally just set my tank on top of here while I'm working on and off. I don't bother putting it inside the groove. And the tank sits up on these bushings. But that's where all your wiring's tucked up inside of. So, basically next, you just want to loosen these. Now, yours will be flathead if you have an original. You'll have to use flatheads. I have an 8mm 5/16, whatever one works, but that's what the hose clamps are going to be. So I got it disconnected. Be able to pull this out. Alright, drop it down a little bit. Basically, you got to unscrew the throttle cable here. This back one on threads. Yeah. So what you can do is hold your throttle open, unscrew it, and it'll lift right out of place. And then you just need a 10, and you bust this nut back loose on the back side of the other, on the returns. It's tight, but you can get in there. And I usually just hold it once it gets loose, spin the other side, and then you can pull that through. Okay, now your cables are disconnected. You have to get it into a good spot to work on. And trust me, it's not easy sliding this guy out of here. You just kind of get it in a position where you can pop the cables out. And my cables, I have them run kind of tight to the bike. If I could get the carburetor to come out this way, and you want to flip your choke lever too, that's kind of what's fighting me now. There we go. It's a fight for me every time I take these out. So, alright, now I'm in a position, I slid it over this way. I can pull the throttle, lift this guy up. Hopefully. You just kind of have to pop it out of that wheel so the barrel will slip out. Okay. Alright. So close. And if you feel kind of froggy and you want to, if you pull the battery and box out, that makes it a lot easier too to get the cables. You turn your wheel to the left, you can get a little bit more slack. So there we go. I guess I said wheel, I really meant handlebars. There we go, one cable out. That was the secret. Turn your handlebars to the left. So see, they're just big barrels that go into the throttle wheel, and I'll show you on the carburetor once I pull these out. Now they come out this way, You can't get out the other way because of the Kickstarter. You kind of have to force the rubber on your intake boot out of the way a little bit. Like that. Make sure your choke lever stays down. Alright. There it is. Carburetor's out. Carburetors. I'm gonna open this guy up. Okay. So here's your wheel here. That's your two cables hook right next to each other there. This one's here with the multiple nuts and the plate, and the other one screws into the bracket. This clamps on. So, and this was what I meant. This part of the clutch choke. Sorry, no clutch here. The choke gets caught up against the battery box, so you can close it. But if you take the battery and battery box out, it does make it a little bit easier. I'm stubborn, so my carburetors have already been, they should have already been synchronized. Basically, you see a little bit of light through both of them. That's been gapped with a piece of guitar string down in there. I think actually I used a cleaner for a cutting torch. So that's synchronized there, these two, and they just open up enough for that lip there. Look at that dirty, nasty ring there. That's even on the right side. Alright, so basically what I'm going to do now, pull these two bowls off and see what's going on inside. Just popping these bowls open but holding them tight. I'm going to drain the carbs out. I rebuilt these. That definitely doesn't mean that they didn't get clogged somehow. So, all right. So that would be right carburetor. Looks like everything's actually kind of looks like the float, the needle isn't coming out like it should be. I think these have, yeah, a rebound on them. Okay, so it looked like the float is working somewhat correctly. Gravity and the fuel pushing through is kind of supposed to push this open, but oh yeah, that's right. These are mushrooms on one side. Okay. So when the float drops, it's not pulling that needle up, but I don't know that it's supposed to. Gravity would kind of help with that, but this is our problem carburetor over here, so this is what we're looking to see if there's an issue here. This is your idle mixture screw.
Idle screw.
Idle screw, yeah. It just changes the RPM on idle. I had a real problem with that. This rod got seized in here a little bit, and I twisted the spring. This is like a spring that runs through here. So it wasn't, you would twist it and it would snap right back. And I took the whole thing off, cleaned it, anti-seized it, put it back together. People were asking almost $50 just for this simple screw online. And they were used. Oh, the gasket looks a little cruddy, that's for sure. It looked like the needle's moving in there freely. there's fuel sitting in there. So that passage is clear. That passage is clear. So issue here is not apparent. Let's double check to make sure we're synchronized here. Yeah, I got a little bit of air under both. They look about the same. That's our idle mixture there. Right here, that's our idle mixture screw on the bottom. Yeah. So, the answer is not apparent here. We don't have a clogged carburetor or anything like that, but it definitely sounds to me that the bike is starving for fuel and is shutting right back off. So I'll probably clean this ledge up real good. Inside both bowls looks pretty clean too. Yep. This one's a little dirtier. Actually, this one's a lot dirtier. This has a lot of dirt in it. Well, what we could do is take our carbon choke cleaner and put a needle on it and blow through the passages to make sure there's no particles in there. There's also the chance that there could have been a small water droplet inside of the carburetor that was blocking a passage as well, that maybe we knocked loose when we took the carburetor apart. Let's give this a good... When I spray in here, it's coming right out through here. So the Venturi effect of the air passing through the carburetor this way should pull fuel through this. So as long as that's passing fuel, that should pick up fuel as it's running. And that the slider inside of it, as that opens up and the fuel and the air gets more intense, it pulls more fuel out of that passage. So both of our floats are working properly. They are sitting at the same height. I'm going to say that I'm going to leave that alone because I measured it and set them up. I did most of this carburetor, so I'm not going to double check all of these measurements. Wipe these gaskets off, they're gross. These used to be square gaskets. They don't sell the house-shaped gaskets anymore. You have to buy them square and very painfully get them attached inside the carburetor on the bowl cover. Yeah. But once you get them in there and they form, actually I think that white stuff was white lithium grease. That's how I kept it in the bowl. So, but now it's formed to the right shape. We should have no issues. That's definitely what that is, white lithium grease. Go ahead and put this guy back on. Okay. I replaced these with stainless steel screws because the original ones were trashed. So, don't tighten them all the way down. I just snug them up a little bit. Crisscross pattern. Not too likely to warp this. It's just good practice. Make sure your gasket's sitting there real nice. Okay. Take this gasket surface down. Yeah, you should have seen these carburetors when I got this bike. They were absolutely hideous. I mean, there was gunk piled up in the bottom of the bowls. I soaked them in vinegar for 2 weeks almost.
Yeah.
And you should have seen that. It was clear white vinegar. When I was done with it, it was brown. It was darker than apple cider vinegar. And it stank like nail polish remover and vinegar mixed. But that's how I got my tank cleaned on this. And that's also how I got the carburetors cleaned. And I put almost 5,000 miles on this bike since I've owned it. So it's not that, you know, the carburetors are still running like crap. I just seem to be having issues now, but I don't think it's related to how the condition of the carburetors were before. The throttle braid arms and everything are pretty tight. The bike only has 11,000 miles on it. I think it had just under 8 or something when I bought it. I don't remember.
Yeah, when he picked the bike up, it had been kept in a wet garage for like 10 years.
15. It sat
15
there.
years it sat parked in one spot and nobody ever did anything with it. And
Tires were flat.
yeah, it needed a fair amount of just maintenance type work to it because nobody touched it in so long.
So, we have no conclusion from the carburetors. I could take the diaphragms out up top since I have it out just to check. It wouldn't hurt. I replaced the diaphragms in this carburetor a while ago. That was actually, I think, right before we moved. You can pull them out, make sure they're not ripped or tore. This is the left carburetor I'm doing first. This, so actually when you're on the throttle opens this up, but the vacuum of the motor, I'm not really even sure how these vacuum diaphragms work in these carburetors. There's no vacuum lines or anything.
Well,
going
when you open your throttle up and it causes it to go through the venturi, it sends a signal up to above this diaphragm, and it pulls the diaphragm up to...
Look at that. We have a C slide. That could have been the problem right there. The slide was seized in there and didn't want to rise up. It's got to rise up. The diaphragm looks kind of funky, but it feels like a rubber balloon.
And that was a carburetor that wasn't working.
Yep. So that could have very well been the issue. It just wasn't pulling enough fuel from the bowl. And this is regular RTV up here. I don't think I had that Moto X stuff yet. So what I did actually, Common sells you this diaphragm and they have you cut this plastic ring off of here and get rid of it completely. What I actually did is I took snips and cut in 2 spots and pulled this off in 2 pieces. 1, 2. And then what I did is I put the diaphragm on and I put my plastic clips back on, and I actually just super glued the ends of it together. They were having you super glue the whole diaphragm in, and I just thought this was kind of a clever idea to keep everything all tight in there. And as you see, I probably put maybe 1,000, 1,500 miles on these diaphragms. Mm-hmm. So we'll see, longevity wise how they hold up. But that's got definitely our issue there. We had a seized slide. I'm glad I pulled this off. There is a particular way these drop down in there. Now I forget. Dang it. Maybe not.
As long as there's not an alignment pin, they should just drop in.
Well, no, I've learned that the holes here either face towards the motor or towards the back. I'm going to check the other side. I can just pull this top off and look. I don't know why it's important. I don't even know if it actually is. I just know that I was having trouble with these when I first put them in, and then I turned both of them to the front or the back, the side or something. to pickle. Okay. It looks like the holes are facing towards the motor. So, see how this one moves in nice and easy. So, that's probably a good reason why our bike wasn't revving or warming up on that side. If you think we're trying to rev it and the motor's moving really fast and all it's pulling through is an idle amount of fuel.
Boing!
Hey, we forgot that spring.
You boing!
We would have had a dead right cylinder and the left one would have been working again. Well, I hope I would have noticed the spring sitting on the workbench. That's why we keep the old man around.
I go like this and drop it on the floor.
I have easy enough time losing my own parts.
I like to help.
I obviously also replaced all these with stainless steel screws as well.
I just got cataract surgery last Thursday. That's the only reason I saw this spring, because before I wouldn't have seen it.
His face would have been on the workbench to see that spring.
Mm-hmm. One eye to go.
We should have got him a Cadillac eye patch. No, he doesn't like Cadillacs all like that.
Yeah, I got the surgery and they're like, no heavy lifting and no welding. I'm like, damn, I can finally weld and actually be able to see, and I'm not allowed to weld for 2 weeks.
All in due time. Go back in with a crispy eyeball.
And the nice thing is the implants they put in your eyeballs are UV resistant. I told the one doctor, I'm like, oh, so I can weld without a helmet? He's like, no!
All right. Holes towards the front. Oh, look at that.
Spring.
It gets stuck. And we have something going on here. Something locking that thing up.
I don't see any wear marks.
What about this
on
stuff
this
up here? That looks like a little bit of super glue at the top that ran out there. A little bit of my super glue kind of looked like it ran down here. Maybe with the cold weather. Obviously didn't reactivate, but maybe got a little bit harder. And with no fuel running through the bike lately, I'm sure fuel still kind of gets up here. And that was my biggest thing with super glue and the whole thing in there, was that I was worried that is super glue really fuel resistant, you know?
Well, I mean, you can hang construction workers up with super glue. I don't know how fuel resistant that makes it though.
Yeah, usually construction workers aren't covered in fuel, or spend their life covered in fuel anyway.
They sure look funny dangling there by their little hard hats though, don't they? Oh, you old guys remember that commercial?
It's still in the bottle, actually.
Oh, okay.
That's what it was.
Ah, super glue. Stupid glue.
Yeah. So, we're going to put our gasket seal back in here, or diaphragm.
We hope.
That's,
you got the hole pointed in the right direction there, sir?
yeah, it's mostly.
Okay. For the most part.
Okay, this is going to be tricky. It was tricky the first time. It's going to be tricky this time, which is why there's RTV all over it.
Yeah, I've never been a really big fan of this kind of carburetor, and it's unfortunate because these things were on so many bikes.
They run good when they're good,
yeah.
But when they go bad, you can always count on it being dirty. But if you're riding it, you don't have it flipped in the right way.
I don't even know what I'm doing.
He just once his camera's in the picture, his finger's in the picture. Woo! Yeah, so we're going to have to get something tacky to kind of hold that in place so I could get that diaphragm to sit in there, because you don't want it pinched. So we'll get right back with you. I'm probably going to use RTV.
Caulk liquid nails.
So instead of RTV to hold that diaphragm in, I actually used red grease in 3 spots, held it in pretty good, and I was able to get the cap one, spring back in. Pretty sure that slide knot opening and closing is what was giving me my dead cylinder. There was no fuel coming in because the metering rod was all the way down in there. So we're going to go ahead and slide this carburetor back in, get the throttle cables hooked back up, tank back on it, and see if it fires up. Both cylinders come to life.
And that noise you hear in the background, it's winter in Pennsylvania.
It might be 75 tomorrow. So, got the carburetor back on, bike fires up. Oh, have the ignition on. Sounds fairly healthy again. I might need to check the timing or the points to see if that's back in track. I can do a little video on that. But if it doesn't sound like we're having a lot of top end noise, then I'm going to take it out and ride it a little bit and see what happens. It's pretty cold, but I'm only going for a quick ride. So this is James from All Hail Internal Combustion. We'll be back with another video on this bike soon. Make sure you like and subscribe. And until next time.